Welcome to the newest episode of The Process of Fat Loss, where our goal is to help you understand the best way to lose fat and live a healthier life. Join us as we discuss some of the toughest and most valuable topics in health and fitness. Today's topic is actually a question we got from one of our viewers. So here it is. Why is it harder to lose weight as we get older? I hear this one all the time. We're going to discuss some of the reasons behind this and how our bodies change, and we're also going to give you guys some answers and ways to counteract these factors.
So, as Nick was saying, as we age, we do have a tendency to struggle with fat loss. And all I'm going to do today is go through and dive through some of the reasons why this might be. I think some of them are going to be a little simpler than you kind of realize. But there are some things we can do to overcome some of the obstacles of aging.
So the first thing we're going to look at is how our body processes nutrients and energy differently as we age.
Yeah, so this is really comes down to like the slowing of the metabolism. Muscle mass naturally would decrease with age if we aren't consistently training for strength. So as obviously in GCP, we do a lot of strength training, and that's an important component to this. If we are doing more cardio than weight training or not doing training at all, so either cardio training or weight training, we'll start to see a decrease in total muscle mass. This is negative for a couple reasons. Each pound of muscle mass is an extra 35 calories. So 35 calories of calories burned, right? So every pound that you have of muscle, your body burns 35 extra calories for every pound of muscle. So if we decrease, say, by 4 pounds of muscle, that's a total of 140 calories less a day that we burn of calories, right? So if we lost 4 pounds over a year, we would be burning 140 calories less every single day. This adds up. If we don't decrease the calories, we are eating by 140. So if let's say you were eating 140 calories, you decrease that 140 calories of muscle burn, right? So now I'm 140 calories left. If I didn't decrease my nutrition to go down to 140 calories, I have a calorie surplus because I'm eating more calories than my calories are actually burning from the year before. So if we did that for 140 calories per day, that's equivalent of 14 pounds of extra body fat gained each year, right? The average person doesn't gain that much body fat in a year, but that is what the equation comes down. If you lost 4 pounds of muscle, which losing 4 pounds of muscle in a year, honestly, is not the easiest thing to do. That's pretty hard to do. You got to kind of be doing a pretty vegan-based diet to do that. Honestly, if you have any meat in your diet, you're probably not going to lose that much muscle in a year. But you could. That's just kind of on the extreme. I think 4 pounds is the most somebody could lose in a year. So I want to kind of put that at that. But you could lose up to 4. You could gain 14 pounds of body fat just because you decreased muscle mass. Another reason is that the decrease in muscle mass can lead to moving less or moving less with less intensity, right? So if you have less muscle, you're going to be moving at probably not a more intense pace. So like a sprinter example, a sprinter that has more muscle mass is going to sprint faster than somebody that doesn't have as much muscle mass. So they're going to burn more calories in that. Or if even just on a hike, you're going to be able to you'll burn more calories by weighing 4 pounds more or having 4 pounds more muscle on you than you were if you were lighter. So you're going to have less intensity because you'll reduce muscle mass. Which would then decrease the number of calories you actually burn through general movement, which is important. Because when it comes down to slowing metabolism, we can control components of that. So when you add these two equations together, it makes fat loss a little bit harder as we age. Also with your slowing metabolism, we'll be burning less glycogen. So less glycogen is energy in the muscles, right? So because you have burning less glycogen, you're actually going to need less carbs as you age. Naturally, people will be probably less active as they age. They will have less muscle mass. No matter, even if they're weight training consistently, you're going to decrease muscle mass over time. It's not going to be a huge amount of muscle mass decrease over time as you age if you are resistance training. But the idea is you're still going to, no matter what, naturally decrease just a little bit. So because of that, you need less carbohydrates as you age because you don't utilize all the muscle glycogen in your muscles. So we need to make sure that we have less carbs. We don't need to overfill it. So to fix this, we need to make sure that we're strength training at least 3 days per week for the rest of your life, right? So that needs to happen from age, 15 years old or whenever people start strength training until, honestly, the day they die should be part of your routine. And they'll actually, in my mind, extend your life if you're strength training that long. It helps to keep the muscle mass at the highest possible level. Another thing about that muscle mass is it does help you maintain a better standard of living as you age too. So if you have more muscle mass as you age, you'll actually feel more active, you'll be able to move better, and you'll have less injury as you get older. And I'm talking about older, 70s, 80s, 90s. The more muscle mass you have, the less injuries you'll have as you start to age that way, and the more movement you'll be able to do because you have more mass. You also, to fix this, you need to reduce your carb intake as your activity decreases, right? So if you're a person that you get your 50s and 60s and you're maybe used to go for runs and you'll go for runs anymore, you need to decrease your carbohydrates because you're not burning those up as much. So you need to make sure you're decreasing that. Otherwise, you're going to start storing extra fat.
So the next area is something that isn't tied directly to aging, but it does often come along as we get older. It can be an issue at any point in your lives, but it tends to start ramping up as we continue to move through life, and that is the issue of stress.
Yeah. So as most people age and life just gets busier and busier and busier, we just add more stress levels. And at in your teens, in your 20s, your stress levels are relatively low. You might think they're high at that time, but they're nothing like a 40, 50-year-old that has kids kind of life is. So, it starts with your career. Your career starts to add up and you start to move up levels and the stresses get a little bit higher. Then you throw kids onto the plate, 1 or 2 or 3 kids, and all of a sudden there's that stress, right? You get a higher paying job then because you've moved yourself up in your career, you get a higher paying job, and all of a sudden they want you to work more hours and the responsibilities you have are more intense, right? Now all of a sudden you're in control of a whole team and you have your team's issues now. The kids start to have activities, they're aging, and now you're running them to baseball games and softball games, and you're going all over the place for all these events. So these stresses, this was called allostatic load, the amount of total stress starts adding up and up and up. Well, the issue with that is our body produces cortisol, which is activated by stress, right? It's a stress hormone. And it starts to become chronically high at this point. High cortisol levels lead to higher appetite and actually more storage of body fat, which is the one thing we don't want to do, is we're trying not to store body fat at this point. But the thing is it does, because it starts to convert it to storing body fat because it needs it. The cortisol thinks it needs it for stressful times. You also have a tendency to cope with food more as we age. And I don't know if that's the same as it. It's probably not the same now as it once was, but it's used to be an older person thing, like somebody in their 40s and 50s will cope more with food. It's happening at younger ages than it ever did before, so I don't know if that's always applicable, because I know young kids that are now using food to cope because food's so hyper palatable. But it used to be as you get older, you'd start to cope with food, instead of smoking or drinking or whatever, people would use food as a coping mechanism. So as you start to get stressful, usually food does come on as more of a way to kind of help settle yourself. So as these stresses start to add up, you start to use this as coping mechanisms. How do we fix this? We need to put some stress reducing activities into our life. And I think a lot of people don't even know. I'll list out some stress reducing activities, but a lot of people don't even know what are stress reducing activities, right? So strength training is a stress reducing activity because it reduces a lot of endorphins that helps our body relax. Walking is a great thing. Getting a massage is a great thing. I know it's not the easiest thing to get all the time, but you can also get those handheld massage guns that will help reduce yourself a little bit. A hobby that's not TV. TV is actually relatively stressful because you don't accomplish a lot of things, and people get stressed when they don't accomplish a lot of things. So too much TV can add stress. So adding a new hobby into your life, something that's keeps you busy, is a good way to reduce stress. A group of friends that you can just relax with, right? And probably a group of friends that you don't relax with and drink alcohol. It's a group of friends that you relax with and just talk or do games or something of that nature. You can also look at reducing your workload. Ask your help from a teammate or a boss. I know that's really hard for people to do nowadays because they feel like that's a weakness. But a lot of bosses want to know, is your plate too full? Because if your plate's too full, you can't be the best version of yourself. So don't be afraid to talk to your team and stuff like, hey, I have too much on my plate. And sometimes I know some people that have even taken a lower paying job or a lower level in their business because the stress just got too high and it wasn't worth that standard of living. Now, that's not something I'm recommending, but I'm just saying it's something that you can think about too. There's lots of options out there. I also think stop drinking caffeine and alcohol are both ways to help reduce stress because both are cortisol raisers, right? They actually increase cortisol. So they add to that stress level and lead to more physical stress on the body. And people usually think like, oh man, I think people would probably get that with caffeine because they need that energy to keep going and they can understand that's a stressor. But like alcohol, most people think, oh no, it's a relaxer. And it's actually not. It actually is a stressor. It's just one of those things that when we first start, the first few drinks, we feel relaxed. But the more drinks we have, the more stress we create on our body.
The next topic is kind of similar to the last area that we discussed, but it's kind of the opposite side of the coin. So how do changes in lifestyle, significant like positive changes, things like that, or just changes in lifestyle in general, impact our ability to lose fat?
Yeah, this next part might not be people's favorite part to hear, but I've always been very honest in these podcasts and I want to make sure I'm always there. But you just have a way more comfortable lifestyle in your 30s, 40s, 50s than you did in your 20s, right? And the way I mean that is like some people in their 20s lived with their parents and they might think that's a comfortable lifestyle. Meaning like adult, in your 40s, you might think that's a comfortable lifestyle. But like the idea is that 20-year-old's not making as much money. They don't have as many, they can't buy as many things with convenience, right? In your 40s, 50s, and 60s, you might be ordering more food, right? You're not making as much food. You're not eating, you have snacks all around the house. You pay people to do the chores that you have to do, right? So you start to get the point that you no longer mow the yard. You have somebody mow the yard. You have somebody do the house cleaning. All these things are starting to decrease the amount of activity that you're doing in your daily life, and life's becoming more convenient. Your hobbies are no longer playing sports with friends or going for hikes and being active. It's amazing how the convenience of life have actually negatively impacted health in certain ways. When you get together with friends, you now have drinks and food instead of doing something active. We just have to realize that it's not really that much harder to lose weight as we age, honestly. It really comes down to be willing to go back to a little bit harder lifestyle. Pretty much every book I've ever read about successful people comes down to being like they have to keep a little bit of toughness in their life. Things can't be too convenient, because when things are too convenient, we become lazy. And that's what it comes down to being, is we've got to make sure that we have a little inconvenience. And things like just doing strength training and routine can be a little bit of inconvenience, or harder strength training can do that. But we need to make sure that we add a little bit more inconvenience into our life. You just have to make sure it's a priority. And that's okay. And it's okay to make sure that you have different priorities now than you did before. But you just have to make sure that if your weight loss is a priority, you need to make it a priority. You probably need less carbs and the calories in your diet because you're just less active than you were 5 or 10 years ago. So how would you fix this? I would find some active hobbies in your life. So when I talk about adding stressors to our life, so things that, not really stressors, but things that are a little bit harder, I usually go towards the adding more activities that are fun into our life. Than trying to be like, okay, I'm going to go back to like having to mow the yard or do something simple like that. Like I usually try to make, how do I have more fun with life? So it'd be like adding activities like pickleball or going for walks, bike riding, join a bike club, something like that. Just add some fun into it that adds a little bit more toughness or a little bit more activity to your life. And then I would start to reduce your overall calorie intake and eat fewer carbs and stuff, because you just don't do as much as you once did. You're not as active 24 hours a day. You're probably more active for an hour a day. And even though that 1 hour a day feels like it's tough, it's still not enough to outdo 23 hours of eating. So realistically, you just need to be smart about making sure that we reduce that overall calorie intake as we start to age.
This final reason that we have is something that can often be a side effect of the previous things that we mentioned. But it can also be something that is to some extent unavoidable in certain cases, and that's medication. So what are some effects medication has on fat loss?
So most medications unfortunately produce a side effect, and a lot of them affect your hunger, they disrupt hormones, and they can cause weight gain. These are usually symptoms of eating a processed standard American diet. So having the medications is usually a symptom of eating a standard American diet, right? We call it the SAD diet. And many of these things can be fixed by eating a clean, whole diet, right? The way to fix this is first to talk to your doctor and ask, like, what kind of side effects do these medications have? And see if those medication side effects are doable for you, or ask, hey, you have anything that has less side effects to it that doesn't affect weight gain or whatever the issue that you're having is, right? So first thing is always talk to your doctor about the medications you're taking, because some medications are required. You do need them for certain health components, and I get that. But there's lesser things they can do. The next thing I would do is, no matter what medications you're on, eat a whole food, clean diet, and see if that will clear up a lot of the symptoms you're dealing with. Because if you do eat a clean diet, a lot of times a lot of the symptoms that you need that medication for actually disappear, and then eventually you can come off that medication. A little bit more intense side is you can go on an elimination diet and see if you have any food sensitivities that might be causing you to have to be on certain medications. A lot of medications are created by your diet, so an elimination diet can help you but diagnose that problem super fast. And then consistently exercising will help keep your body healthy, will keep it in a little bit of a position where you might not need as many medications. I'm not going to say medications aren't required. There are certain things that you're going to need medications for, but a lot of things that you could get rid of a lot of medications by eating a cleaner, healthier diet and exercising consistently.
So I know you have one final piece on how to fix these things and kind of overcome these obstacles and change the direction of our health as we age. So what can we do to reverse aging?
So we talk about them all the time, but there are 8 keystone habits of fat loss. So we want to make sure that on our 8 keystone habits of fat loss, which you don't know about those, we have a guide. You can always reach out to us and we can send you off the guide. But they're the 8 things that we think if you do every single day, you will be the healthiest version of yourself. And the healthiest version of yourself will help you reverse your aging. We've had people that we have clients that I think they're probably 62, 63 years old or in their early 60s. I wouldn't guess are over like 51, 52 years old. And when they came to us, they really haven't aged and they probably de-aged during that time. It's incredible. But doing the basic habits really makes a world of difference. I think keeping your carbs below 20% is really important as well. And it's because as we age, we just don't use carbohydrates as much. And those carbohydrates store as body fat a lot. And so realistically, we don't need the carbs. And the carbs are usually where we eat a lot of the crappier food. That's where we get into the breads and the cereals and the pastas and things our body doesn't need and doesn't utilize. So we just got to be very conscious of carbs. The carbs are still good. Vegetables and fruits are awesome, but people just don't eat those often enough. They go to the other stuff. And then the biggest key you need to follow those 8 habits. You need to follow the low carb, and you need to do that honestly the rest of your life, which is a long time to do them, but you have to do that forever.
So what are some things that our listeners can take away from the topics we discussed today and implement into their lives?
So realize that yes, there are some factors that are out of your control as you age, but not as many as you actually think are. Mainly the reason it's harder to lose weight as you age is because you've gotten really comfortable. You become a little bit more sedentary in your life as you've gotten older. If you want the same results as you had as a younger person, you either need to do more movement, you need to do as much movement as you did as a younger person, or you need to eat cleaner than you did at that point. And you have to do it probably more than just 1 hour a day, just that one workout a day. You probably need to be in. I'm not talking about you need to work out 6 hours a day, but we're talking about walking, moving around more, walking farther from your car to the grocery store, creating just a little bit more activity throughout your day instead of spending 1 hour working out and 23 hours not doing something active. You also need to change your eating habits different than when you're younger. Younger, you probably get away with quite a few carbs. You could probably get away with a lot more processed foods in your diet, but you can't do that anymore. You don't utilize the carbs like you did 5, 10, 20 years ago. You need to get rid of those carbs, get it down under 20%. If you have a lot of weight to lose, you need to probably get even lower than that until you get to that point, you get that weight loss. You need to eat quality protein and fats, and you'll see the fat start melting away if that's something you're looking for. But realistically, you need to have that clean, healthy diet for the rest of your life if you want to maintain the body that you have currently or improve the body you have currently and keep doing it as you age, because age isn't really as big a factor as people think it is.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those tips. Hopefully you guys listening can implement some of those things that we talked about and kind of try to overcome any of the obstacles if those are things that you're facing. I hope you guys all enjoyed it listening to our discussion of today's topic. Remember, the best time to start living healthier is today, so make sure to take action in your life right now. If you enjoyed our episode, be sure to leave us a review. You can do that on Spotify, Apple. It really helps get people to listen to our podcast and kind of share these things that we're talking about. If you know anyone that's interested as well, you can share this with them as well. If you subscribe, follow us on social media, keep you up to date on new episodes that we're coming out and different topics we're talking about. And then if you have any ideas for any topics that you want us to discuss or any questions, like today's topic was a question we got from one of our viewers. So if you have any questions you want us to talk about, let us know. You can send us an email, leave us a comment, or message us on social media to get us those questions. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you guys will join us for the next episode of The Process of Fat Loss.